Mary Welch, the 10-month-old daughter of Seth Welch and Tatiana Fusari, was discovered dead on August 2, 2018. Instead of immediately seeking medical assistance upon finding her lifeless body, the couple contacted their legal team first. As the investigation unfolded, the horrifying details of the case came to light, marking it as one of the most disturbing incidents detectives had ever encountered. While they had witnessed children suffering from severe malnutrition before, the sight of Mary moved them to tears. It was the most heart-wrenching and shocking case they had ever worked on. So, what exactly happened to Mary? Kent County, nestled in the heart of Michigan, is home to a lively community of 657,000 residents. Known for its exceptional quality of life, it stands as one of the best places to live in the state. The county embraces diversity, fostering a sense of unity and inclusion that makes it a welcoming haven where families can thrive. With a perfect blend of urban energy and small-town charm, Kent County offers the best of both worlds, allowing residents to enjoy the vibrant city life while savoring the cozy atmosphere of a close-knit community. The friendly nature of the county creates an inviting environment where neighbors become friends, and a strong sense of belonging flourishes. However, within this seemingly idyllic setting, tragedy struck. This was no accident. A life was lost. But what led to such a devastating outcome? Tatiana Fusari, born on June 1, 1990 in New York, moved to Grand Rapids at the age of 20 to reconnect with her estranged mother. Sadly, her mother rejected her, leaving Tatiana to find her own way in an unfamiliar city. Eventually, she enrolled in child development at Grand Rapids Community College, dreaming of one day opening her own daycare. Feeling lost and alone, Tatiana's life took a turn when she met a charming man named Seth Welch, who was a year younger and hailed from Cedar Springs, Kent County. The two immediately connected, and after just one date, they moved into a modest house together. As time passed, the honeymoon phase ended, and Tatiana found herself trapped in a toxic and controlling relationship. Seth's demanding nature and frequent criticisms became the norm. Despite the difficulties, Tatiana discovered she was pregnant with their first child, hoping this would mark a new beginning for their lives. Over time, the couple had 3 children, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and the youngest, Mary Welch, born on October 23, 2017. In an effort to create stability for their growing family, Tatiana and Seth purchased a farm near Cedar Springs. Yet, just when Tatiana thought life might improve, Seth's behavior became even more troubling. One day, Tatiana walked in on Seth having an inappropriate video call with another woman, leading to a heated confrontation. Seth responded with violence, pushing her and repeatedly hitting her. Isolated from friends and fearful of Seth's increasingly erratic behavior, Tatiana felt trapped. Seth's control extended beyond emotional and physical abuse. He imposed religious beliefs on their household, refusing medical care for his children on religious grounds. He believed in natural selection, thinking only the strong should survive, and refused to vaccinate the kids. His disturbing mindset saw their children not as precious lives to nurture, but as burdens if they couldn't contribute to his ideals. On August 2, 2018, Tatiana went to pick up some clothes from a neighbor's house. Upon returning, she sensed something was terribly wrong. Around 10 a.m., she woke Seth to tell him their youngest daughter, Mary, wasn't breathing. Despite Tatiana's frantic attempts at CPR, it was clear that Mary had been dead for some time. Seth called 911 at 12:16 p.m., reporting the death of their 10-month-old daughter. Officers arrived at the home in Cedar Springs. The scene was devastating. Little Mary was found lifeless in her crib, her body frail and emaciated. But the most horrifying discovery was the state of her crib. Her mattress was soaked with urine and covered in mold. The paramedics couldn't immediately determine whether the child was 10 days or 10 months old due to the severe state of neglect. The circumstances surrounding the infant's death were unclear, prompting investigators to treat the case as suspicious. Although Seth Welch allowed investigators to search the home, they waited for a warrant to conduct a thorough investigation. Once the warrant was obtained, the police led a detailed examination of the Welch residence, where they uncovered disturbing conditions in baby Mary's crib. The home was described as extremely filthy, with toxic black mold found under the mattress. The house was also infested with flies, and mouse droppings were found in the drawers. During the search, only one container of baby food was discovered, and no formula was found at first. However, crime scene photos later revealed 3 containers of baby formula in the house, 2 of which had expired 5 months before Mary's death. Mary had been left alone for at least 19.5 hours before she was discovered. A hole in the door of her bedroom allowed her parents to occasionally check on her, but despite these intermittent checks, her condition had worsened dramatically. What came to light after the investigation was shocking. Seth, Mary's father, responded to the discovery of his daughter's lifeless body in an unnervingly strange way. Instead of immediately seeking medical help, he made a series of bizarre decisions. First, he called his parents, who were lawyers, to seek advice on what to do next. He then searched the internet for information on a rapper's kidnapping, a topic entirely unrelated to the situation. In another bizarre move, he sent a text message about selling a goat, showing a complete lack of urgency about the dire situation. It took nearly 90 minutes before he finally called 911 to report the tragedy. This delayed response caused detectives to question his actions and priorities during such a critical time. Further investigation revealed that Child Protective Services, CPS, had previously interacted with the family in 2014 when THC, or the primary psychoactive compound found in cannabis, was found in their eldest child's system at birth. Seth had expressed distrust of doctors, claiming they had falsified documents against him. A forensic pathologist who performed Mary's autopsy determined that the cause of her death was a combination of severe malnutrition and dehydration, the result of prolonged neglect by her caregivers. Death from starvation or dehydration is a slow and painful process where the body gradually breaks down its muscle and fat reserves. At 10 months old, Mary weighed only 8 pounds, almost the same as she did at birth. Her body had become so weak that she couldn't move her arms or legs, crawl, or even lift her head. He also noted that Mary's condition was not sudden. It resulted from chronic malnutrition that had likely lasted for weeks or even months. She lacked the strength to cry for food or water and simply suffered in silence until her last breath. The couple was summoned to the Kent County Sheriff's Department in Michigan for questioning on the same day. During her interrogation, Tatiana broke down immediately when asked how many children she had. displaying a flood of emotions. While it seemed like genuine grief, detectives wondered if it was an attempt to gain sympathy or if she was afraid for her future, especially since she had waited hours to contact the authorities and had consulted lawyers first. Meanwhile, Seth, in a separate room, showed no emotion and appeared to be in good spirits, acting unaffected by the death of his 10-month-old daughter. Despite Seth's lack of remorse, detectives were closing in on the truth. They used various strategies to get Tatiana to talk, including appealing to her maternal instincts and suggesting that Seth was solely responsible for Mary's condition. One detective asked Tatiana to put herself in the shoes of the officers who were called to the scene and discovered a severely malnourished child. He emphasized how thin Mary was and how unbelievable it was that she could have lost so much weight in just 2 days. Though Tatiana came across as a concerned and educated mother, she tried to minimize her role in the tragedy by claiming she didn't realize something was wrong until it was too late. Tatiana admitted that she and Seth had discussed Mary's condition about a month earlier when they noticed that their daughter wasn't filling out her clothes as she should have. Still, they chose to rely on faith, hoping that things would improve without medical intervention. When asked how she would react if someone claimed God told her to sacrifice one of her children, Tatiana firmly responded that she would never go through with it. The interview continued, with Tatiana speculating that Seth might have been worried about CPS involvement if they had taken Mary to the doctor. She suggested this could be why they avoided medical help. Ultimately, the detectives saw through their excuses. It was clear that the couple had prioritized avoiding CPS over the well-being of their child. Their neglect was enough for authorities to charge and arrest both Seth and Tatiana. The pair turned the interrogation into a mockery, laughing at the police and their tactics. They joked about Mary, showing no signs of remorse or concern for the life they had lost. Ultimately, Seth and Tatiana were arrested on charges of first-degree murder and first-degree child abuse. That night, the couple from Cedar Springs found themselves in jail, awaiting charges in connection with the death of their infant daughter. Investigators revealed that 10-month-old Mary Welch died due to malnutrition and dehydration. After their arrest, Seth and Tatiana were tried separately. During Seth's trial, the prosecutor delivered an impassioned account of the horrific conditions Mary had endured. She emphasized that Mary's suffering was nothing short of torture, as she had been confined to a filthy crib, deprived of basic care and nourishment. The defense attempted to downplay the severity of the case, arguing there were no visible physical injuries. The prosecutor, however, rebutted by stating that Mary's entire body was a wound, emphasizing the extensive damage caused by her starvation. It was further claimed that Seth knowingly allowed his daughter to die, viewing her as too small and weak to contribute to his plans for their farm. During the trial, Seth chose not to testify in his own defense. Instead, his attorney spoke on his behalf, arguing that Seth had provided food for his daughter and that his religious beliefs influenced his decision not to seek medical care for Mary. He suggested that Seth may not have fully understood the gravity of her condition. The defense portrayed Seth as misguided by faith, though unintentionally so. The prosecution, however, countered by highlighting the inconsistencies in Seth's supposed distrust of medical treatment. Despite his claims, Seth had sought medical care for himself. Prosecutors pointed out that, while in jail, Seth had requested and received prescription glasses, casting doubt on his fear of medical interventions. The prosecution argued that Seth's actions were selfish and contradictory, choosing care for himself but not for his own child. Seth's attorney also argued that the presence of soiled diapers indicated Mary was being fed, attempting to portray Seth and Tatiana as overwhelmed rather than malicious. He claimed that, while their parenting was flawed, it did not amount to child abuse or murder. However, the prosecution presented compelling evidence, including photos showing the extent of Mary's malnutrition and the unbearable conditions she had been forced to endure. The jury, made up of 7 women and 5 men, convicted Seth of first-degree child abuse and first-degree murder in January 2020. It took them less than 90 minutes to reach a verdict after 3 days of emotionally charged testimony. The evidence made it clear that Seth had failed to provide the necessary nutrition and medical care for his daughter, even as her body wasted away to just 8 pounds at the time of her death. One juror compared Mary's emaciated state to the images of starving children in Ethiopia, stating her condition was even worse. Tatiana's trial followed, where she recounted years of abuse at Seth's hands. She testified that Seth had subjected her to violence, including pointing a gun at her head and physical assaults. Her defense attorney argued that the abuse had left Tatiana emotionally and psychologically scarred. Despite her claims that she had fed and cared for Mary, the autopsy report revealed a different reality, showing that Mary had not been fed in the days leading up to her death. Tatiana insisted she had last breastfed Mary 19 hours before she died, but the prosecution argued that the evidence suggested Mary had been dead for at least 72 hours before they called 911. At the time of her arrest, Tatiana was pregnant and later gave birth to another child while in prison. The fate of her remaining children became a concern, with the public questioning whether she and Seth were fit to retain parental rights. On October 15, 2021, after about 3 hours of deliberation, a Kent County jury found Tatiana guilty of first-degree murder and first-degree child abuse in connection with Mary's death. Tatiana's defense attorney expressed disappointment with the verdict and vowed to appeal. Tatiana, who had once dreamed of opening a daycare to provide love and care for children, now faced a stark contrast between her aspirations and the tragic reality of her own daughter's death. Despite cultivating fresh produce on their farm, Seth and Tatiana failed to nourish their own children. Allegations surfaced that their other children were also neglected, even resorting to eating grass and dirt to survive. As Seth and Tatiana awaited their fate, their surviving children were placed in the care of relatives and foster homes. The case left many questioning how 2 parents could neglect their children so severely and what role Tatiana truly played in the tragic events. Was Tatiana another victim in this story, or did she share the blame? Did their other children face similar neglect, and could their fate have been different if their parents had cared for them properly? Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel. On August 22, 2005, the police received a call from a woman named Stacy Castor, who expressed concern about her husband. She reported that he had locked himself in their bedroom and was refusing to come out. When the police arrived at the couple's home, they forced the door open and found 48-year-old David Castor dead, sprawled across the bed. It appeared he had ended his own life by drinking antifreeze. Stacy put on quite the performance, screaming when she learned of her husband's death, but it was all an act. Stacy had murdered David, and this was not her first killing. Stacey Ruth Daniels, who would later be known as Stacey Castor, was born on July 24, 1967 in Clay, New York. She was the only child of Jerry Daniels and Judy Eaton. Little is known about the early years of the cheerful red-haired girl. Her mother, Judy, once mentioned that Stacey had big dreams for herself. She emphasized that Stacey was very intelligent and had confided in her that she dreamed of attending university and becoming a legal assistant or lawyer. Those close to Stacey described her as a shy young girl who found it difficult to start conversations, but eventually managed to socialize at school gatherings or family events. In 1985, at the age of 17, Stacey was still in high school when her life took an unexpected turn. During this time, she met the outgoing Michael Wallace, who was 23 years old. Michael, born on September 16, 1961 in Auburn, New York, worked as a mechanic. Despite their contrasting personalities, they began dating a few months after their first meeting. While Michael enjoyed being the center of attention and surrounded by people, the reserved Stacey preferred to stay quiet and keep a low profile. However, their temperaments seemed to complement each other, and the couple formalized their relationship. Stacey, excited, told her close friends that she fell in love with Michael within 5 minutes of meeting him and was certain she would become Mrs. Wallace. On April 7, 1987, Stacey's prediction came true. After 2 years of dating, the 20-year-old Stacey married 25-year-old Michael. Judy recalled that her daughter was very happy after the wedding. A year later, in 1988, the Wallaces welcomed their first daughter, Ashley. Instead of bringing them closer, the birth of their daughter began to distance Michael and Stacey. Within a few months, problems between the couple became apparent. Stacey, a stay-at-home mom, relied solely on Michael's income, which created financial strain with the arrival of another mouth to feed. 3 years later, in 1991, the couple had their second daughter, Bree. Rather than bringing joy, the new baby did not improve the tense family atmosphere. Stacey began accusing Michael of favoring their younger daughter, creating a family divide with two sides. Michael was closer to Bree, while Stacey formed a stronger bond with Ashley. It is unclear if the sisters' relationship was affected by their parents' preferences. Ashley and Stacey started having a relationship that was more like best friends than mother and daughter, a fact they both were very proud of. In the following years, the arguments between Michael and Stacey became more frequent, making the situation unbearable and leading to their separation. Rumors soon spread about the reasons behind their breakup. Stacey accused Michael of drug and alcohol abuse, allegations that were never confirmed. Others suggested that both were having extramarital affairs, a theory that also remained unproven. Friends of the couple attributed the distance to Stacey, starting to work as an ambulance driver at night, while Michael spent all day repairing vehicles. Despite both having jobs, their financial problems persisted. Although they were separated, Stacey and Michael had not finalized their divorce, possibly holding on to the hope that things might improve between them. By the winter of 1999, Michael Wallace's family stated that he was considering legalizing his separation from Stacey. Amidst this marital crisis and the cold weather, Michael began to experience health issues. What started as a simple earache quickly escalated into a much more severe illness. Ashley later recalled that during this time, her father had trouble walking and speaking. She remembered seeing him sitting in the dining room drinking coffee when he suddenly started vomiting. He then lay down on the bed and fell asleep as if nothing had happened. Michael's discomforts persisted, leading him to seek medical attention. He told the doctors he felt lethargic. His sister was the first to notice something was seriously wrong with Michael's health. She observed his alarming deterioration during the family's Christmas gathering that year. Rosemary noted that Michael was coughing a lot and looked very swollen. A few weeks after the holidays, on January 11, 2000, Michael was found unconscious on the family home's couch. He was rushed to the hospital where he died hours after being admitted. Ashley, who was 11 at the time, remembered the last moment she saw her father alive. She said Michael was lying on the couch making funny faces. Suddenly, he raised his arm in the air, then put it down, and his arm just fell. Michael Wallace was 38 years old when he died. The medical report stated that he had died of a heart attack. Those close to Michael found it strange. He was a young and healthy man, with his only recent medical visit being for an ear infection. His sister disagreed with the doctor's conclusion that Michael had died of cardiac arrest. She claimed that before his death, Michael's skin had turned a deep purple from his head to his chest. When she requested an autopsy, Stacy refused. The grieving widow said she did not doubt the doctor's diagnosis and expertise. Stacy's refusal for an autopsy seemed reasonable, and Michael's sister put her suspicions aside. Michael was eventually buried in the local cemetery. In the following months, Stacy received all of Michael's financial assets, including a $55,000 life insurance payout. However, misfortune seemed to follow Stacy. 2 years later, on February 26, 2002, her father was hospitalized with what appeared to be a minor lung condition. Jerry responded well to treatment, and the doctors decided to discharge him. However, a few days after leaving the hospital, he died suddenly. Witnesses stated that Jerry collapsed after a visit from his daughter Stacy. The autopsy report on Jerry's body concluded that he had died of natural causes. As Jerry's sole heir, Stacy decided to cremate his remains. After these two close deaths, the attractive redhead was determined to rebuild her life. It wasn't long before Stacy found the perfect candidate to give love another chance. Through her boss, the widow and mother of 2 girls met a divorced man named David Castor. David was born on June 12, 1957, in Syracuse, New York. He was one of 4 children born to Philip and Joyce Castor. He spent his entire life in the Liverpool area, where he established his refrigeration company, Liverpool Heating, which he directed and operated. David was also a longtime member of a four-wheeler club and the Snow Pals Snowmobile Club. Stacy and David quickly began a relationship, and after a few months of dating, they married on August 16, 2003. From that date, she started using her second husband's surname. Initially, the couple seemed happy, but behind closed doors, their relationship was becoming difficult. The story seemed to be repeating itself for Stacy. According to people close to the couple, Stacy was uncomfortable with the close bond her new husband had with his son, David Jr., and his mother, Janice Poisson, David's first wife. To make matters worse, David did not get along with his stepdaughters. According to Ashley's later accounts, David was a bad stepfather who wanted nothing to do with her and her younger sister Bree. David reportedly told the young girls that he had no intention of being their father, as he already had a son, which was enough for him. Ashley mentioned that there was tension often caused by her mother's new husband. Stacy also shared with some close friends the discomfort that permeated her home. She claimed that David was difficult with the girls, as he expected them to do everything he said without question. Despite these issues, Stacy maintained that her relationship with her husband was good. However, the reality was that their problems were pushing the marriage to a breaking point. The final straw for the Castors came on Sunday, August 21, 2005, when David planned a surprise getaway to celebrate their second wedding anniversary. Ashley had just started her first job and couldn't watch her sister Bree that night. Thus, the Castors' Sunday outing was canceled. This led to a 7-hour argument in the garage. Afterward, David took a bottle of alcohol and locked himself in a room. The next day, Monday, August 22nd, Stacy was still upset, so she went to work without entering the room where David had spent the night. At the office, Stacy called 911, expressing her concern for her husband, whom she had last seen the previous day after he locked himself in a room following a marital fight. The police arrived at the house shared by the couple and Stacy's daughters. The officers knocked on the bedroom door, but there was no response. They broke down the door and found David motionless, realizing immediately that he was dead. Initially, it was thought that David had taken his own life. However, during a routine inspection of the house, officers found a dropper in the kitchen trash, which seemed unusual. They then discovered 2 half-full glasses on the nightstand beside the bed where David lay. One contained a bright green liquid identified as antifreeze, and the other had cranberry juice. Under the bed, they found a container of antifreeze, a substance used to cool vehicles. Due to its high toxicity, it is considered very dangerous and is forbidden to ingest. It has a sweet smell and taste that attracts animals and sometimes children, so it must be stored carefully and disposed of properly to prevent accidental poisoning. The main ingredient in most antifreezes is ethylene glycol, a deadly toxin that converts into oxalic acid in the body, which enters the kidneys and crystallizes. Symptoms include weakness, nausea, seizures, tremors, lack of coordination, excessive thirst, rapid heart rate, and paralysis, often resulting in death. Detectives took the evidence from the room where David died for forensic analysis. Tests revealed fingerprints on the glass containing antifreeze that matched Stacy's. The positioning of the prints suggested that the widow had held the glass to David's mouth. DNA from David was also found on the dropper discarded in the trash and on the antifreeze container. Besides the scientific evidence, David's family and friends rejected the notion that he had taken his own life. Those who knew him, including his ex-wife Janice, dismissed the idea from the start. Additionally, investigators found it illogical that someone would drink poison and then dispose of the dropper in the trash. All indications pointed to something sinister behind David Castor's death. The case was assigned to a veteran detective who began a 2-year investigation. He immediately ordered covert surveillance of Stacy to observe her movements without her knowledge. Stacy had buried her second husband next to her first. Investigators set up surveillance cameras at the cemetery, hoping the widow would visit the graves and reveal suspicious behavior, but she never showed up. The detective also discovered that the deaths of Stacy's first and second husbands had distinctive similarities. According to their families, Michael and David had always been in good health, with no history of depression. However, some members of the investigation department wanted to close David's case as a self-inflicted death, while others wanted to continue the investigation. The only way to move forward was to revisit Stacy's past and investigate Michael's death, which involved exhuming his remains. Detectives obtained a court order to exhume Michael's body and conduct an autopsy. The forensic examination revealed crystals of antifreeze in the remains. It became clear to investigators that Stacy had killed both her husbands using the same method, a lethal dose of antifreeze. When the police interviewed their prime suspect, they were surprised. One of the detectives showed Stacy a photo of the nightstand and asked if the contents she poured into one of the glasses were cranberry juice. She responded nervously, mentioning that she had poured antifreeze but mispronounced the name of the substance. She had inadvertently uttered the word that would condemn her. Her brain hadn't lied. By the time Stacy realized her mistake, it was too late. She tried to correct herself, accusing the detective of trying to confuse her to incriminate her. She continued protesting, but the damage was done. Realizing she was caught, Stacy requested a lawyer. Meanwhile, the police decided to talk to Ashley. They waited for her to finish her first day of university classes and informed her that they had performed an autopsy on her father, Michael Wallace, discovering that he had been poisoned. Ashley later recounted that she broke down in tears and was furious when the officers told her they had exhumed Michael. It was difficult for Ashley to accept that her father's memory was being disturbed. She immediately called her mother, telling her everything in a distressed state. Stacy listened attentively. It's unclear what thoughts crossed her mind, but she invited her eldest daughter over to talk in detail while sharing some drinks. Given the horrible week she had had, Ashley agreed. As soon as she arrived at her mother's house, Stacy prepared a drink for her. After a few sips, Ashley passed out. The next day, Stacy promised they would drink together again after classes. Ashley accepted the second invitation and, as agreed, went to her mother's house after university. Stacy made her a cocktail that supposedly contained vodka and juice. Although Ashley noticed a strange taste, she drank it, trusting her mother completely. The following day, Bree found her sister Ashley unconscious and barely breathing. The teenager alerted her mother, shouting at her to call 911. While Stacy dialed emergency services, Bree found a note in Ashley's room, supposedly confessing to killing both her father and stepfather. Paramedics arrived within minutes and rushed Ashley to the nearest hospital. The doctors informed the family that if she had arrived 15 minutes later, she would not have survived. When Ashley regained consciousness, detectives questioned her about her suicide attempt and the note she had left. She was shocked and confused, assuring the officers that she had not tried to harm herself nor had she confessed to killing anyone. Ashley recalled the last thing she remembered from that night was drinking the beverage her mother had given her, noting that it had tasted strange. The police had no further doubts and immediately arrested Stacy at the hospital on suspicion of attempting to kill her daughter and murdering her husband, David Castor. The investigation later revealed some of the calls Stacy made after learning about Michael's exhumation. In a conversation with a close friend, detectives overheard Stacy's concerns about the exhumation and her attempts to distance herself from the accusations. From the day Stacy was detained, the only person who believed in her innocence was her mother, Judy. Judy could not accept that her daughter had killed her two husbands and then tried to harm her own eldest daughter. She continued to blame anyone else for the crimes. On December 20, 2007, Stacy was charged with second-degree murder, second-degree attempted murder, and conspiracy to present a falsified will. This last charge was because she had tried to alter David's will to exclude his eldest son, David Jr., from his first marriage. On September 25, 2008, 3 years after David's tragic death, the judge ruled that Michael's death could be presented as evidence in the trial. Stacy had hired a defense attorney who argued that Ashley was responsible for David's death and had also attempted to take her own life. On January 12, 2009, Stacy Castor's trial began. She faced an initial sentence of 25 years to life in prison. The jury heard testimony from over 50 witnesses and deliberated for 3 days. From the first day of the hearings, Stacy maintained that she was innocent of all charges. She claimed that David had taken his own life because he had been depressed for several days over his father's death and because they had argued the day before. A detective testified at the trial, detailing the results of the 2-year investigation. He explained that he had spoken with his colleagues about Michael's death to gather more information. They confirmed that there were certain similarities in the deaths of both husbands. He was told that when Stacy was interrogated before, she claimed Michael had various health problems. However, upon reviewing and consulting Michael's medical records, they found that the only significant issue he had in his 38 years was a hernia. During the trial, it was detailed that antifreeze poisoning is excruciatingly painful, indicating that both Michael and David likely suffered greatly in their final moments. A police officer highlighted that the forensic pathologist who performed Michael's autopsy after his exhumation reported finding antifreeze crystals in his remains. The detective also explained that, in addition to surveillance cameras, they had wiretapped Stacy's phone. It was through one of these calls that they learned she had visited the cemetery a few days after Michael's body was exhumed. The county district attorney stated that investigations determined Ashley had consumed several cocktails prepared by her mother on September 12 and 13, 2007. Ashley told them that the drinks tasted odd, and her mother gave her a straw to make drinking easier. She then felt dizzy and lay down. On the morning of September 14, 2007, Bree found her sister nearly dead. When Stacy called 911, she told the operator that her eldest daughter had consumed alcohol and a significant number of pills. She also mentioned that Ashley had left a suicide note. The district attorney noted that the medical report on Ashley revealed a cocktail of various drugs, including Lexapro, had been crushed and mixed with vodka in her bloodstream. The jury was also informed that during her initial interviews, Stacy mispronounced the word antifreeze, and when they analyzed the supposed suicide note written by Ashley, they noticed the chemical name was misspelled in the same way. This led them to suspect that Stacy had written the note herself. This suspicion was confirmed by forensic computer examinations, which found 2 drafts of the letter in Stacy's deleted files. These drafts were created at times when Ashley was at university, ruling out the possibility that she had written them. Despite all the testimonies and evidence against her, Stacy continued to assert her innocence. She claimed that her only brush with the law had been a speeding ticket when she was 18. However, the most revealing testimony was yet to come. The prosecution called Ashley to the stand, whose declaration was devastating. She said she could not imagine that her own flesh and blood was sitting just feet away, claiming she had tried to take her own life. In a heated cross-examination, the prosecutor confronted Stacy with recorded phone calls obtained from the wiretap, as well as evidence extracted from her computer. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Finally, on February 5, 2009, Stacy Castor, 41, was found guilty of second-degree murder for the death of her husband, David Castor, as well as the attempted murder of her daughter, Ashley Wallace, and the forgery of David's will. A month later, she was sentenced to 51 years in prison and was incarcerated at a correctional facility for women. She would be eligible for parole at age 88. Stacy had no further contact with her daughters from the moment she was arrested at the hospital where Ashley was admitted. Despite the verdict, she continued to assert her innocence. In May 2009, during an interview for ABC News, she expressed her disbelief upon hearing the verdict. She described looking around, sitting down, and waiting for the moment to leave the courtroom. Before the ABC News cameras, she insisted she had not killed Michael or David and had not attempted to harm her daughter, stating she would never admit to something she did not do. For the television report, the reporter also spoke with Ashley, who declared that she hated Stacy for ruining so many lives, but still loved her because she was her mother. Stacy appealed the guilty verdict. Her defense attorney spent nearly 2 years searching for evidence pointing to a different killer. Stacy suggested it was easy to blame wives for crimes against their partners, but claimed children were also capable of such acts, pointing to news stories as evidence. She remained adamant that the truth would come to light, the evidence would prove her innocence, and she would eventually return home. But none of this happened. Judy visited her daughter every month in prison, maintaining Stacy's innocence. She also ceased contact with her 2 granddaughters. In an interview with ABC, Judy stated that if evidence ever emerged proving Ashley committed the crimes, she would apologize for the rest of her life. On the morning of June 11, 2016, after serving 7 years and 4 months of her sentence, Stacy Castor, dubbed the Black Widow by the media, was found dead in her cell at age 48. Authorities ruled out suicide. The autopsy revealed that Stacy had died of a heart attack. Ashley graduated from university with near-perfect grades. She and her sister continue to try to move forward with their lives. Regardless of the fact that there are fewer female killers than male, and irrespective of the motivations behind such crimes, the case of Stacy Castor gathered a series of circumstances that turned it into a scandal, capturing national attention for nearly a decade. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.
During the time that she's been missing, have you looked through her room, looked through her property?
No.
When were you were aware that a car had been left behind? Were you aware of any other things that had been left behind that she'd normally have with her?
No, I couldn't find her car keys, which was strange. They always put in the drawer in the kitchen and they weren't there. So I assumed she had her car keys with her.
Kate Wakefield Prout was born in 1952 in the ceremonial county of Gloucestershire, in the northwest of England, into a traditional family of English farmers. Her parents' names remain unknown, but it is well known that Kate's childhood was spent among the rural activities and games with her 2 brothers, Richard and Edward. The trio's bond remained strong over the years, but when adulthood arrived, Kate was the only one who pursued a different career path, working as a school teacher. During this period, both of her parents passed away. After settling the inheritance issues, the siblings divided the estate. By 1999, Kate, unmarried and childless, decided to retire early. She sold her share of the houses, intending to rest, enjoy the vast greenery, and spend more quality time with Richard and Edward. She also planned to indulge in her favorite hobbies, being near the beach, surrounded by animals, and arranging flowers. Kate moved to the countryside to live with her brothers, who were engaged in farming. At 48 years old, tall, blonde, green-eyed, and intellectually accomplished, Kate was very attractive. During this time, she met a younger neighbor, Adrian Prout, who was going through a difficult period after ending a long relationship and caring for his teenage daughter, Laura. Edward allowed Adrian to temporarily live in a mobile home on their property. In gratitude, Adrian helped with the farm work, and Edward admired him for his business acumen and drive. Kate and Adrian quickly hit it off, fell in love, and got married in September 2000. They bought a lovely house together but sold it 4 years later when they received an excellent offer. With the proceeds, they realized a dream by purchasing 115 hectares on the outskirts of Red Marley Dabito, a beautiful area. In 2004, the couple moved to Red Hill Farm in Red Marley, investing a significant amount of $1.2 million. The plan was for Adrian to manage the farm, continue his piping business, and organize pheasant hunting events, which were highly prized by wealthy British landowners. With Adrian's dedication and Kate's efforts in public relations and catering, their hunting events, which adhered to conservation rules to protect wildlife, became very popular. However, the harmony in their marriage began to falter when Laura, Adrian's 17-year-old daughter, moved in with them. Initially, the tensions were typical for having a teenager in the house. However, things worsened when Laura's boyfriend started spending a lot of time at their home. One day in 2006, Kate prepared an elaborate lunch for the four of them, but Laura and her boyfriend decided to eat elsewhere at the last minute. Frustrated and at her wits' end, Kate confronted them with everything she had been holding back. The argument was so intense that Laura decided not to live on the farm anymore. This incident strained Kate and Adrian's relationship further, leading to frequent and heated arguments. The situation escalated to the point where Adrian, in a fit of anger, pushed Kate against a truck. Adrian pushed Kate with such force that she hit the metal siding of a truck. Determined to leave him, she packed a bag with her essentials and went to stay with her brother Richard. However, a few weeks later, they reconciled, and Kate returned to Adrian. The peace was short-lived. On February 1, 2007, Kate called her brother Richard again, revealing that Adrian had been arrested for domestic violence. During a brutal argument, plates were thrown, hitting Kate on the head, and the confrontation continued in the garden. It ended with Adrian holding her by the neck over an empty pool, threatening to drop her. Despite mutual accusations, there were no witnesses. After this terrifying incident, Kate stayed with Richard and his wife for a considerable time. During this period, she confided in them about Adrian's controlling and abusive behavior. She revealed that despite co-owning their property, Adrian withheld her share of the income, forcing her to rely on her pension for personal expenses. Realizing the marriage was over, Richard and his wife were unaware that Kate had remained in contact with Adrian. In fact, 2 months after the pool incident, Adrian convinced her to meet face-to-face. They reconciled that night, but the happiness was short-lived, and the heated arguments resumed. Determined to protect her financial interests, Kate began documenting numerous details about her marriage in her personal diary, expressing herself in ways she had never done before. The summer of 2007 was tumultuous, and in an attempt to save their marriage, Kate planned a romantic trip to Italy, buying tickets for October. When Adrian backed out at the last minute, Kate invited her sister-in-law instead. Before leaving, Kate made arrangements to ensure Adrian was comfortable at home, including hiring a woman named Diane Bellamy to care for the dogs, plants, and day-to-day tasks. Upon returning, Kate suspected a clandestine romance between Adrian and Diane. Though Diane testified in court that it wasn't true, she admitted that Adrian had attempted to kiss her several times. One evening in late October 2007, while at a bar with friends and clients, Kate, inebriated, began airing her grievances loudly. She accused Adrian of having an affair and criticized Laura, Adrian's daughter. When Adrian tried to calm her, Kate slapped him in front of everyone. The party ended abruptly, and Kate spent the night at a neighbor's house. Following this incident, they seriously considered divorce. Kate sought legal advice and requested an updated appraisal of their shared property, which had significantly increased in value to $1.84 million. Adrian offered her $850,000 in maintenance, but on Sunday, November 4, 2007, Kate refused. She stated that the only offer she would accept, being generous, was $1.13 million, which she felt was fair. Adrian was furious, knowing that to pay her that amount, he would have to sell the land they had bought 3.5 years earlier, an option he was unwilling to consider. The next day, Monday, November 5, 2007, Kate was seen at a fruit market in Ledbury, and later, around 3:30 p.m., contacted her bank. After withdrawing $21,000, she rejected Adrian's financial settlement in the divorce negotiations. What happened next has been pieced together as follows. Around 5:30 p.m., they argued in one of the tourist lodges they offered to hunting enthusiasts on their property. Adrian was preparing for a pheasant hunt with clients scheduled for the next day. Knowing this, Kate threatened to disrupt the event and embarrass him in front of everyone unless he agreed to her demands. Furious, he remained steadfast in his position. Kate reminded him that the property was purchased largely with her father's inheritance. The argument escalated until Adrian grabbed her by the neck with both hands and squeezed with all his strength. After about 15 seconds, Kate fell to the ground, lifeless. Realizing he no longer had to divide his fortune, Adrian went to the main house, sat in a chair, poured himself a whiskey and savored it. A while later he returned, wrapped Kate's body in a curtain and some large white plastic sheets, put her body in the trunk of his truck and drove to a local bar for a few beers. By the time he returned to the car, it was dark. He then drove to a wooded area on the outskirts of their pheasant hunting grounds and dug a grave about 5 feet deep and as long. Finally, he buried the body and left. With no news from his sister and unable to reach her by phone, Richard asked a mutual friend who lived nearby to check on her. The friend found the door unlocked and Kate's car parked outside, but no sign of either Kate or Adrian. Like Richard, the friend couldn't reach them on their cell phones. Richard went to the house and waited with his friend for Adrian to return. When Adrian finally arrived, he claimed he hadn't seen Kate for days. Shocked by his response and his evident coldness, Richard pressed him. Adrian defended himself, saying he hadn't looked for her because he didn't consider her missing. He thought she was just keeping her distance. Under Richard's insistence, on November 10, 2007, Adrian reported Kate's strange absence to the police. Despite launching an extensive search of the farm and its surroundings, the authorities found no trace of Kate. The last confirmed sighting was on Monday at the fruit market. After that, nothing. Given the peaceful nature of their village and Kate's popularity with neighbors, the situation was deeply troubling. No one in the village suspected Adrian. As a wealthy, middle-aged businessman, they believed he had too much to lose to harm his wife. However, the police couldn't ignore his connection to the missing woman. On Sunday, November 11, 2007, Adrian was brought in for questioning. The police immediately noticed some peculiar details. Simultaneously, a search of the couple's property revealed that Kate had left without taking anything: no jewelry, clothes, money, or credit cards, not even her car, which was still parked there. It was highly unusual. 3 days after the initial interview, authorities began to suspect the worst. By then, they were considering several possibilities. The first was that Kate had left for some reason and, after encountering harm, was unable to return or contact her family. The second was that she had left deliberately and didn't want to be found. The final, more sinister scenario was that a crime had occurred, either an abduction or something worse. This launched one of the largest search operations in Gloucestershire, involving over 60 officers. Additionally, the same trained dogs used in the search for missing British girl Madeleine McCann were deployed. Dozens of police officers combed the grounds while helicopters equipped with infrared cameras and tactical police divers scoured the ponds. To grasp the scale and difficulty faced by the search team, the estate spanned over 250 acres, equivalent to approximately 240 American football fields, each measuring 1.32 acres. And this was only a fifth of the cultivable land, which also included at least half the area covered by woodland. Initially, officers identified over 100 areas where a body could be buried, but ultimately ruled them all out. They also searched inside Kate and Adrian's home and around the property's perimeter, using specialized dogs. Despite the challenges of searching without a body, the dog indicated a spot near the patio, which, according to its handler, suggested a body had been there at some point. This result strengthened investigators' belief that Adrian was the prime suspect, but without solid evidence, there was little they could do. Around this time, Diane ran into Adrian at a bar. Believing he was devastated like everyone else, she expressed her support. To her surprise, Adrian responded with absurd statements, claiming that Kate had been taken away without specifying by whom, and he asked her not to ask further questions. On November 27, 2007, Adrian was arrested, and simultaneously, a second search of the vast property was conducted using helicopters equipped with thermal sensors. After hours with no results, Adrian was released without charges. While outsiders believed Adrian was incapable of harming anyone, Kate's brothers suspected foul play and thought Adrian's hands were stained with blood. These suspicions seemed validated as Adrian continued his life as if nothing had happened. In fact, a month after Kate's disappearance, Adrian met Debbie Garlick, a 41-year-old divorced mother of two, at a nightclub in Staunton. They quickly developed a romance with Debbie, captivated by his personality, believing his innocence and thinking the police and justice system were wrongly accusing him. The romance thrived in the following weeks and months. In early February 2008, Diane encountered Adrian again and noticed he seemed frightened. Meanwhile, investigators found Kate's personal diary in her car, leading to Adrian's second arrest on February 19, 2008, for suspicion of murder. However, he was released on bail, and Richard and Edward begged him to confess what they believed was already obvious. Spring and summer passed, with each new season deepening the despair of Kate's loved ones, who watched in disbelief as the case seemed to dissolve without progress or answers. The stark contrast was Adrian's idyllic life with his now fiancée Debbie. In February 2009, the police informed Adrian that he was no longer a suspect. Elated, he convinced Debbie to move in with him at the property he had once shared with Kate. However, 3 weeks later, on March 10, 2009, the police knocked on the door to arrest Adrian once more. Although he was jailed for a month, he was again released on bail. Unbeknownst to him, the investigation continued quietly, and shortly after, Adrian was formally charged with the crime. This did not prevent his relationship with Debbie from progressing. Released on bail, they got engaged in June of that year, and by then, Debbie was pregnant. Their daughter was born on January 7, 2010, after a scheduled delivery. Despite the looming criminal charges and the ugly suspicions surrounding Adrian, they maintained the facade of a happy family, with Adrian portraying himself as a good father and husband. The trial began on January 21, 2010, with Adrian proclaiming his innocence. Debbie attended the hearings, bringing their weeks-old baby. One of the testimonies was from Diane, who clarified that, despite Kate's suspicions, there had never been any relationship between her and Adrian. Diane recounted how Adrian had tried to seduce her and detailed his strange behavior after Kate's disappearance. By the end of the third week, in a remarkable effort, the investigation officers convinced the jury that all evidence pointed towards Adrian. Consequently, in February 2010, Adrian Prout was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 18 years behind bars. The verdict also prevented him from profiting from Kate's will, which she had made in his name. Despite the conviction, Adrian's family, friends, neighbors, and especially his fiancée continued to believe in his innocence. They clung to the idea that without a body, there was no crime or valid accusation. Supporters rallied to free him. Laura, Adrian's eldest daughter, started a social media campaign, while Debbie's daughter from her first marriage did something similar, gathering nearly 500 signatures for his release. Debbie, holding their daughter, campaigned tirelessly and even offered a $14,000 reward for any information proving Adrian's innocence, money she had inherited from her father. Desperate to clear her partner's name, Debbie convinced Adrian to take a lie detector test. She challenged him, saying he had nothing to lose if he was innocent. Confident as always, Adrian agreed, believing he could outsmart the machine. Debbie, hopeful for his release, hired polygraph expert who visited the prison in Lancashire. Adrian appeared calm and confident, stating he was doing it for Debbie. However, Adrian failed the test, and the expert informed him of the results. The expert then called Debbie, who was shocked and in disbelief. Debbie needed answers, so she visited Adrian in prison to hear the truth from him directly. Still harboring a sliver of hope that it was all a misunderstanding, Debbie was devastated when Adrian confessed the terrible truth. In shock, she listened to his pleas not to leave him but knew she had to be resolute. The burden and anguish were immense, but Debbie contacted the investigators and told them everything. The homicide detectives interrogated Adrian again and finally obtained the long-sought confession. All that remained was to locate Kate's body. On Friday, November 18, 2011, authorities took Adrian to the farm. Handcuffed, Adrian led them to a wooded area within the pheasant hunting grounds and indicated where he had buried Kate. Despite the directions, the search was challenging, requiring ground-penetrating radar and search dogs. A forensic archaeologist also assisted in the delicate task. On the fifth day of digging, they found what appeared to be Kate's remains. Richard and Edward were the first to be notified, and although they were informed that formal identification was still pending, the news brought them a sense of closure. The doubts, anguish, and exhaustion they had endured for 4 years gave way to a feeling of relief. This relief grew when the forensic team confirmed the remains were indeed Kate's. The Gloucestershire police broke the news to the press and offered Richard and Edward a chance to speak about their harrowing experience over the past 4 years. Richard and Edward emphasized the difficulty of knowing who was responsible for Kate's disappearance while being unaware of the fate Adrian had chosen for her. They expressed their only desire was to give Kate the rest she deserved and to move forward with their lives. When asked about their feelings towards Debbie, Richard acknowledged that she was now in a position similar to theirs, finally forced to face a terrible truth. The family held Kate's funeral on January 4th, 2012, choosing to keep it strictly private. It had been 4 years and 2 months since her brutal murder, but Richard said they were relieved to have closure. By then, the veil that once clouded Debbie's judgment had lifted, and she understood the manipulative nature of Adrian. In media interviews, Debbie stated she was certain Adrian had used her and their young daughter to portray a false image of a responsible and loving family man. As of 2024, the once powerful English landowner remains behind bars. The farm was sold by Kate's brothers, with the proceeds going to a local hospital and to Kate's nieces and nephews. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. A young son, a devoted brother, a first-generation Irish American. He excelled in academics, thrived as an athlete, and was tirelessly studying to conquer the grueling CPA exam. Chad O'Melia was the embodiment of every parent's dream. But in a shocking twist of fate, this golden boy was found brutally murdered, stabbed over 100 times. What dark forces had turned his promising life into a horrific nightmare? Chad Brandon O'Melia was born on September 27, 1991, in Santa Clarita, a city located north of Los Angeles, California. His father, Sean O'Melia, an Irish construction supervisor, and his mother, Michelle, separated when Chad was just 5 years old. Despite their separation, they worked hard to ensure Chad had a happy childhood. According to those close to him, Chad was a kind young man with a bright smile and boundless energy. He had a great sense of humor and was always responsible and dedicated. His friends saw him as the big brother of the group, always looking out for them without expecting anything in return. Chad developed a passion for American football at a young age and played throughout his teenage years. He continued playing while attending Chico State University, where he studied accounting and eventually graduated. After graduation, Chad moved to an apartment in Thousand Oaks, part of the greater Los Angeles area, taking his dog, Athena, with him. He shared the apartment with a young man named Vinny Oliveira. Alongside working at an accounting firm, Chad was studying to obtain his Certified Public Accountant, CPA, certificate. However, his busy days left him with insufficient sleep at night, leading him to develop a habit of using cannabis to help him sleep. According to Vinny, Chad was often intoxicated when seen at the apartment. Chad didn't hide this from others, and even his parents were aware of his cannabis use. Although they didn't approve, they didn't see it as the worst thing he could be doing. Sean explained in an interview that Chad never smoked when visiting him because he knew Sean disliked it. Sean considered cannabis a dirty substance with a foul smell that changed Chad's personality and decreased his motivation and concentration. Little did Sean expect that Chad's addiction to cannabis would dramatically change his life, all because of a woman he barely knew. Bryn Spoicher was born on January 25, 1991 in Chicago, Illinois. From a very young age, Bryn faced serious health issues that required numerous surgeries and strong medications. These medical procedures and medications severely deteriorated her hearing. At 4 years old, she began using cochlear implants to hear better and also learned to read lips. Her medical condition made her feel isolated and different from others. Throughout her schooling, she was often the only student with hearing loss and would hide her hearing aids to fit in and avoid teasing. As she grew older, she decided to turn this aspect of herself that once embarrassed her into a strength. Bryn pursued a doctorate in audiology at the University of Washington School of Medicine, graduating in the 2010 S. She excelled in her field, with one professor stating that out of the thousands of graduate students he had taught, Bryn stood out as brilliant, and none could surpass her. In August 2017, at the age of 26, Bryn moved to Thousand Oaks and secured a job as an audiologist at UCLA Health, a health system comprising various medical centers, including the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. For almost a year, she lived in a rental apartment that didn't allow pets, so she had to leave her Siberian husky, Arya, with her family in Illinois. It wasn't until April 2018 that she found a place where she could bring her beloved canine companion. Having Arya by her side again significantly improved Bryn's daily life, as she had trained the dog as a service animal 2 years earlier when Arya was just a puppy. Bryn often took Arya for walks at Conejo Creek, a popular park in Thousand Oaks. It was there, at her favorite spot, that she met Chad in late April 2018. According to her account, Chad was the one who initially approached her. On several occasions when their paths crossed, the 26-year-old Chad asked for her phone number, but she declined each time. Eventually, Chad handed her his business card so she could text him if she ever wanted to meet up. That's exactly what Bryn did. And soon they began an informal relationship. They would go out to eat or hang out with friends, and once they shared a bottle of Irish whiskey while watching their dogs play in the park. Bryn was drawn to Chad's sarcastic humor, which contrasted with his kind and sweet personality. She expressed that although she wasn't sure they'd get along at first, she soon realized they fit together like puzzle pieces. On Sunday, May 27, 2018, the day before Memorial Day, Bryn went out drinking with some friends. Chad contacted her later, inviting her to visit. Around 10:30 p.m., the 27-year-old Bryn arrived at Chad's place with Arya. They spent time together, drinking a bit and chatting with Chad's roommate, Vinny. Shortly after midnight, Chad took out his water pipe and loaded it with cannabis. He went out to the balcony to smoke alone, but Bryn soon joined him and asked for a hit. After inhaling, all she felt was a burning sensation in her throat, which made her cough. She told Chad that she had never had good experiences with cannabis, as she never felt its effects as others described. Surprised, Chad loaded the pipe again with even more cannabis, encouraging her to try again to feel the effects. Bryn complied and smoked again. What happened next was so horrific it seemed like fiction. In the early hours of May 28th, the Thousand Oaks police responded to an emergency call made by Vinny. Something terrible was happening at the residence and they needed immediate help. When officers arrived, their body cameras captured the violent scene unfolding inside the apartment. Bryn had savagely attacked Chad with several sharp objects taken from the kitchen and then turned one on herself. The footage is so graphic it has not been released to the public. In an attempt to stop her, officers fired a taser 4 times, but Bryn seemed unaffected by the electric shocks. They then used their batons, striking her 9 times until she finally dropped the weapon. Bryn suffered 5 fractures in one arm and deep cuts on her neck, face, and right hand. She had also attacked her dog, Arya, who fortunately survived. Tragically, Chad was not as lucky. By the time police arrived, he was already lifeless on the floor, with a total of 108 wounds across his body, as later revealed by the forensic report. Bryn was rushed to the hospital and immediately taken into surgery to save her life. The procedure was successful, and she was admitted to the same health center for recovery. Investigators wasted no time and questioned Bryn as soon as she regained consciousness, still intubated and unable to speak. She responded in writing, briefly recounting that she had told Chad she didn't want to smoke anymore, but he had forced her to do so. This response led detectives to believe that Bryn did not remember her actions, a revelation they decided to share with her a few days later. Once Bryn had sufficiently recovered from her injuries, she was arrested and charged with homicide. The aftermath of the incident impacted not only Bryn, but also her victim and their families. It was Chad's father, Sean, who had to break the tragic news to his ex-wife, Michelle. In an interview, the grieving father chose not to disclose how he delivered the news, as the memory was too painful to revisit. However, he did share that he requested the police allow him to personally inform Michelle, wanting to be there to console and support her. He recalled seeing the moment her soul shattered as he spoke the words. From that moment, Michelle fell into deep depression. Sean reflected that losing a child brings overwhelming guilt and makes one doubt if happiness is ever possible again. This was Michelle's experience, compounded by her type 2 diabetes. After the funeral, she felt she had no right to smile. She refused to let loved ones take photos of her looking happy, believing it would be disrespectful to her mourning and her son. This mindset led her to neglect her health, ceasing her medical treatment. 18 months after Chad's death, Michelle passed away from severe cardiac dysfunction. Tragically, she did not live to see the conclusion of Bryn's trial. Though it's impossible to know, it's likely the delay between the last hearing and the sentencing of the person responsible for her son's death would have caused her even more pain. Sean explained in later interviews that shortly after the legal proceedings against Bryn began, he started receiving notifications that the defense had requested extensions, claiming they needed more time to prepare for trial. These messages arrived at least every 6 months. This situation dragged on for over 5 years, also impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thus, the first trial hearing did not occur until November 9, 2023. During this initial proceeding, Bryn, fully recovered from her injuries, had the opportunity to testify before the jury and those present in the courtroom. The then 32-year-old woman, equipped with a real-time transcription monitor on both the witness stand and the defendant's bench, shared her story. Bryn recounted her life before describing the events of May 27, 2018. She stated that after encouraging her to smoke a second time, Chad got up to fetch the water pipe. Once loaded, he brought it to her face, insisting she inhale immediately to feel the effects. Bryn explained she felt she couldn't refuse him, admitting he hadn't used physical force, but his persistence frightened her. She revealed that Chad did not always exhibit the sweet demeanor others attributed to him, and that she had seen him in bad moods, which pressured her into compliance. According to Bryn, minutes later she began to feel as if they were trapped in a time loop. The conversation with Chad seemed to repeat endlessly, giving her a constant sense of déjà vu. She lost the ability to form coherent sentences, which caused her anxiety. Seeking relief, she went back inside, lay down on the couch, and closed her eyes to calm herself. She then reported hearing voices in her head and seeing things with her eyes closed that were clearly not there, all while feeling trapped in a never-ending cycle. At some point, Bryn felt she had died, believing she was trapped inside her own corpse. She described seeing and hearing her loved ones mourning her, even feeling hands touching her body. This wasn't the most bizarre experience of that night. She claimed to have had an out-of-body experience, seeing her own body lying on the couch from above. She added that Chad was beside her, crying uncontrollably, and paramedics were attempting to revive her. Before continuing, Bryn clarified that what happened next felt as if she were in a movie, viewing events from the perspective of one of the characters, as if it were happening to someone else, not her. She recounted pushing the chairs aside in the apartment to make her way to the kitchen, where she grabbed 2 knives and threw them forcefully at Chad. She then took 2 more knives and approached one of the dogs, attacking it. Bryn thought she heard Chad ask why she had hurt Athena, but later learned it was Arya. She then walked to where Chad was standing, and just as she raised the knife against him, she lost consciousness completely. Despite this, she continued hearing voices in her head, urging her not to stop. She also heard Vinny, who ran out of the apartment to call the authorities. The hallucinations persisted for what felt like hours, becoming so intense that she ended up cutting her own neck with the knife. After that, everything went black again. Eventually, Bryn regained consciousness, though not fully and not for long. It was not a slow, gradual process, but quite the opposite. She felt the electric shocks from the police taser used to make her drop the knife, and in her delirium, she thought they were using a defibrillator to resuscitate her. She recalled waking up in the hospital when authorities began asking her about what had happened. However, her memories were blurry, and she couldn't distinguish what was real from what she had hallucinated. It wasn't until 2 days later that investigators informed her she had killed Chad. The defense attorney referenced tests conducted on the water pipe after the incident and called another person to explain the results. The expert stated that drug detection tests are not 100% reliable, as some substances might not be immediately identifiable. He asserted that while the report clearly indicated the presence of THC, the main psychoactive component of cannabis, there was a significant possibility the weed had been laced with something else. This was even more probable if Chad had purchased it from an illegal vendor, who might add other substances to enhance effects and reduce costs, despite recreational marijuana being legal in California at that time. Bryn's legal team also highlighted that until then, it had been overlooked that Vinny, Chad's roommate, had smoked the same substance earlier and also experienced hallucinations. Based on this, Bryn's defense portrayed her as an innocent woman with little experience in substance use, who couldn't have known what she was smoking when coerced into it. This was corroborated by testimonies from her acquaintances. Old friends from high school testified that she was never interested in drugs, which was why she had cut ties with some people. A 33-year-old woman named Amy Carrowick, who met Bryn in 2007, mentioned they bonded over shared interests in high school. She noted that while Bryn played basketball, she played softball, and they both enjoyed activities typically unpopular among girls like camping and hiking. Bryn first smoked marijuana in 2014 when she started dating a man named Kevin, with whom she had a 3-year relationship. The couple took a joint to a mountain campsite in Washington and decided after smoking that it wasn't for them. Kevin, a personal trainer and ex-Marine, believed Chad could have coerced her into smoking that night. He explained that they broke up in 2017 when Bryn moved to California, but described her as carefree, charismatic, and pleasant. It was logical for the defense attorneys to base their strategy on these arguments, as California's penal code stipulates that individuals under the influence of drugs or alcohol are fully responsible for their actions unless they were forced or deceived into intoxication. Despite their efforts, the jury ultimately rejected this argument. The statement Bryn had given to the police while still hospitalized became the primary issue facing the prosecutor and the defense. The accused had initially provided a written statement confessing that she had voluntarily taken the second hit from Chad's pipe. She claimed this document had been concealed from the prosecution for a time. Moreover, in one of the hearings, the prosecutor unveiled new evidence that could potentially turn the trial around. She portrayed Bryn in a starkly different light than the defense did, supporting her argument with a series of text messages exchanged in 2018 between Bryn and several friends. In these communications, Bryn referenced getting so drunk that she had to miss work the next day and mentioned consuming cannabis-infused foods. This served as a basis for the prosecutor to question not only Bryn's original statement, but also all her testimonies. The prosecutor emphasized that Bryn had not mentioned to investigators or doctors that she had been pressured or intimidated during most of her interviews. Bryn responded to both allegations. She explained that she tended to exaggerate her experiences when talking to friends, but had never been so drunk as to black out or miss work due to a hangover. She added that she had only been late to work once after a night out drinking. Regarding the interrogations, Bryn stated she hadn't shared all the information with the police in each interview because she assumed the detectives already knew everything after repeating the same answers multiple times. To counter the prosecution's claims, the defense hired mental health experts who determined that Bryn had not suffered from any mental illness, problems, or violent tendencies before the attack, suggesting that a marijuana-induced psychotic episode was the only explanation for her actions. This argument undermined the prosecutor's case, leading the jury to reduce the charge. On December 1, 2023, after 4 hours of deliberation, Bryn was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter instead of the initial charge of murder. The verdict was a shock to the victim's family and friends. On January 22, 2024, the day before the sentencing hearing, they gathered in front of the county government building, demanding a sentence fitting the severity of Bryn's crimes. On January 23, 2024, the courtroom was filled with spectators, journalists, and family members. The room was so crowded that staff had to place people in the jury box and even had some standing in the aisle. Amid sobs, Bryn took the stand one last time to apologize to Chad's family, especially his father, who had endured the ordeal without the support of Chad's mother. However, the most emotional moment of the hearing came when Chad's paternal grandmother read a statement she had written. The elderly woman addressed Bryn, expressing forgiveness for what she had done, adding that if she couldn't forgive her, God wouldn't forgive her either. After nearly 6 years of waiting, the judge sentenced Bryn to 2 years of probation instead of the 5 years in prison she faced after being found guilty in December 2023. As part of her punishment, she was required to complete 100 hours of community service to raise awareness about cannabis-induced psychosis. She was warned that violating the terms of her probation could result in imprisonment. Following the verdict, Sean criticized the judge for what he perceived as a biased decision influenced by the defendant's gender and race. He also expressed concern about the message this decision sent regarding marijuana use, feeling it gave consumers a green light to justify illegal actions. Lastly, he suggested that Bryn should be hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation to study her brain's unique chemistry, believing that the drug alone wasn't the sole cause of the alleged psychotic episode and hoping an investigation might clarify it. The prosecutor voiced her concerns about the precedent set by the judge's decision, describing the sentence as a mockery of the criminal justice system. She considered this case, marked as involuntary manslaughter, one of the most atrocious and violent cases in her 29-year career seeking justice. The tragic end of Chad and the lenient sentence given to Bryn sparked a debate on recreational cannabis use. A famous forensic psychiatrist noted that the increasing acceptance of cannabis in society led to misinformation about its associated risks. He pointed to various studies showing a clear link between cannabis use and psychosis, though he admitted it doesn't occur in 100% of cases. As the legal system faced criticism for its handling of the case, society reflected on the risks associated with cannabis use, questioning whether marijuana is truly a catalyst for violence or merely a trigger among a broader set of circumstances or pre-existing medical conditions. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. On Saturday morning, August 19, 2017, Norberta Graywin watched her 22-year-old pregnant daughter, Savannah, struggle to climb the stairs to her third-floor neighbor's apartment. Savannah was 8 months pregnant, and the unusually hot August weather made it difficult for her to walk on her swollen legs. A few hours later, William Hone, the boyfriend of Brooke Cruz, the same neighbor who had invited Savannah over, climbed those same stairs. When he entered the apartment, he found Brooke scrubbing the bathroom, with Savannah's bloody and shredded body lying on the floor and a basin with a baby on top of the toilet lid. Seeing William, Brooke picked up the infant and handed it to him, saying, "This is our baby. This is our family. Please help me." In a shocking twist against any sense of morality, William assisted Brooke in cleaning up the blood, carrying bags of bloody towels and clothes out of the apartment, wrapping Savannah's body in bags secured with duct tape and ropes, and later disposing of the corpse. This heinous crime would soon send shockwaves across the entire nation. Savannah Graywin was born on August 9, 1995, in Belcourt, North Dakota. Her parents, Norberta and Joe Graywin, were Native Americans. She was a member of the Spirit Lake Sioux tribe. Shortly after Savannah's birth, the family moved to Fargo, but they returned to the reservation when she was 9 years old. Growing up in a vibrant, multicultural community, rich with colorful traditions, Savannah was immersed in nature and surrounded by the love of her family, which she valued above all else. This circle also included her grandparents and 3 siblings. Savannah was a horse enthusiast with a caring soul and was known as a committed student with average performance at Warwick Public High School. It was during her studies there that she met Ashton Matheny, who, like her, was a member of the Spirit Lake Sioux tribe. Their romance quickly blossomed, and by 2010 they were certain they had found the love of their lives. Though they dreamed of starting a home together, it was still early. However, Ashton's daily interactions with Savannah gave him a glimpse of her maternal instincts, as she adored children, particularly her nephews, whom she helped raise with great joy. Later, Savannah attended the Lakes Region State College and earned a degree as a certified nursing assistant, which led to employment at a senior care home. When the home was acquired by a large American company, she was transferred to Fargo in January 2016. To keep Savannah company, her entire family moved to Fargo, renting a modest ground-floor apartment. At that time, Ashton lived and worked in Minneapolis, about 270 miles away, making efforts to visit her regularly. During these visits, they discussed saving money to eventually move in together. In the apartment above Savannah's lived the couple Brooke and William. Brooke, born on July 4, 1979, had a troubled past despite growing up in a normal family in Florida. She was always a problematic young woman, and her relationships over the last 2 decades showed she was obsessive, had poorly controlled aggression, and a knack for intimidating people. At 17, in 1995, Brooke gave birth to a daughter from her relationship with Aaron Edwards. After becoming a mother, she worked as a pet store animal technician and a sales representative. However, one day she left the state without explanation, abandoning her husband and daughter. She then led a life on the fringes of the law, ending up imprisoned in Missouri for passing bad checks, and later in Texas for violating parole while working as a waitress in a Chinese restaurant. When her daughter turned 14, Brooke had some virtual conversations with her through a social network, maintaining brief contact, always behind Aaron's back, who hadn't heard from his ex-wife since she left. Throughout those years, Brooke had numerous lovers, which she boasted about until she remarried in 2006, this time to Carl Cruz, a carpenter from Minnesota. The couple had 2 children, and Brooke worked as Carl's administrative assistant. After 3 years, Brooke left for a period, and upon her return, Carl discovered she kept meticulous records and diaries detailing rather peculiar matters. The most shocking entries included detailed accounts of her various lovers and, more disturbingly, comprehensive reports on births and pregnancy terminations. Brooke kept meticulous notes that included a list of items needed to dispose of an unborn child: scissors, knives, tweezers, gloves, and oxytocin to induce contractions or cause a miscarriage. In 2010 and 2011, Brooke visited Australia, and during one of these trips, she suffered a spontaneous miscarriage. Doctors informed her that she could no longer have children. At the end of that year and the beginning of the next, Brooke was arrested for attacking her husband Carl with a knife. After regaining her freedom, she traveled back to Australia using a false identity. In a sworn statement during a custody battle for their 2 children, Carl wrote that she often fled from her problems, citing her trips to Australia as an example. Living life on her terms, Brooke met Andrew Murray, a chef from Katoomba, through a dating app. She quickly moved to the Blue Mountains and married him. However, Andrew soon discovered the countless lies surrounding his new wife, who had concealed her true identity, the fact that she had children and that she had been previously married. Despite her deceit, Andrew fell in love and decided to salvage their relationship. He stood by Brooke's side but soon grew uneasy about her obsession with real-life crimes. Brooke's fixation on criminal psychology and famous criminals became her sole reading material and favorite conversation topic. Initially, Andrew saw it as a peculiar but harmless hobby, But his perspective shifted when she began threatening him. Andrew became alarmed as her behavior grew increasingly aggressive. He suggested she return to the United States to care for her children, but this only worsened the situation. Brooke threatened to report him to the authorities and attempted to terrorize him, making him believe the police were after him. Exhausted by her delusions, Andrew went to the nearest police station, offering to cooperate with the authorities, as he had nothing to hide. The officers informed him there were no charges against him and suggested something was wrong with his wife. Andrew recounted the torment he endured, including threatening texts and immigration documents with false names. 6 months and 10 days passed from Brooke's arrival in Australia until her return to the United States in October 2012. Back in the U.S., Andrew maintained contact with Brooke for 2 weeks, contemplating a move to reconcile their marriage. However, he soon realized it was futile. Concerned by her erratic behavior, he alerted the Fargo police about the potential danger she posed. However, the police seemed indifferent to his warnings. Eventually, Andrew severed ties with Brooke and moved on. Back in the U.S., Brooke engaged in a prolonged custody battle with Carl for their 2 children. Around the same time, in late 2012, she began a relationship with William, a few years younger than her. Details about William's background are sparse, but it is known that he had recently completed a sentence for child neglect and abuse after bringing his son to the hospital in January 2011 with fractures near his right ear. The whirlwind romance led Brooke and William to move into an apartment in the same Fargo building where Savannah's family lived. William, blinded by what he believed to be an unbreakable love, dreamed of building a home and family with Brooke. Although Brooke initially reciprocated William's feelings, she hid her significant difficulties in conceiving. Meanwhile, Brooke faced the frustration of the court granting exclusive custody of her 2 children to her ex-husband Carl, while she only had visitation rights. Brooke made a living through temporary jobs, either in stores or various nursing homes. Over the months, her feelings toward William changed, as reflected in her diary. On December 23, 2014, she was diagnosed with anxiety at a Fargo medical center and was told she had post-traumatic stress disorder. To make matters worse, the following year, Brooke received a medical report about a growth in her gallbladder, darkening her mood even further. By that time, she wrote in her personal notes about a shadow that seemed to be consuming her true personality. Throughout that year and the next 2, their relationship oscillated between routine calm and occasional conflicts. Given the tragic events that later unfolded, investigators believe Brooke was likely seeking a solution to fulfill her desire to be a mother again and to prevent William from leaving her. While Brooke's life seemed to be spiraling into chaos, Savannah and her boyfriend Ashton's relationship appeared increasingly promising. At the beginning of 2017, they received the wonderful news that they were expecting their first child. The family's jubilant reaction to the news only heightened the couple's excitement for their bright future. Ashton doubled his efforts to achieve their long-awaited independence and marriage. In the fall of 2017, the doctor informed them they would have a girl, filling them with joy. Around that time, their upstairs neighbor, with whom Savannah's family had only a courteous relationship, approached the pregnant young woman with an invitation to smoke an illegal substance. Savannah refused and immediately informed her family about the absurd proposal, especially given her advanced pregnancy. From that moment, Norberta and Joe, Savannah's parents, viewed Brooke and her boyfriend William with suspicion. Saturday, August 19, 2017, began like any other day. At 22 and in her 8th month of pregnancy, Savannah looked radiant but understandably tired. She eagerly awaited her baby's due date. Shortly after noon, Brooke called Savannah to her apartment for help with sewing, explaining she needed her to try on a dress. Despite her distrust, Savannah agreed to help. Once inside, Brooke became hostile, accusing Savannah of mistreating her cats. At 1:30 p.m., Ashton sent a message to Savannah, which went unanswered. Suddenly, the two women engaged in a physical fight and Savannah fell, hitting her head. The impact left her unconscious and Brooke took the opportunity to fetch a knife. Using the sharp object, Brooke performed a cesarean section without medical knowledge, driven by her desire to steal the baby. In excruciating pain, Savannah tried to rise and saw in horror as Brooke removed her baby and placed her in a bathtub. Without proper medical attention, Savannah was severely weakened from profuse bleeding, and soon after, her heart stopped. Worried for his daughter and suspicious of the strange neighbor, Joe knocked on Brooke's door but received evasive responses. The details of William's involvement in the crime vary, with investigators debating two scenarios. In the first, William arrived after Savannah's tragic end. In the second, upon discovering the bloody scene, William tied a rope around Savannah's neck to ensure she had no signs of life. According to the reconstruction of events, what is certain is that Brooke showed the newborn to William, declaring they finally had a family. William then cleaned the crime scene, gathering all evidence including shoes and blood-stained towels, and disposed of them far away. The couple discarded Savannah's body in the Red River on the outskirts of Fargo, near the Minnesota border. Meanwhile, Savannah's family, desperate after countless unanswered calls to her phone, reported her disappearance that same Saturday afternoon. Officers arrived at their home at 5 p.m. and, after a brief conversation with Norberta and Joe, learned where Savannah was last seen. They immediately went upstairs and knocked on Brooke and William's door. The initial visit by the police to the apartment revealed nothing suspicious, so they left. However, a few hours later, still with no news of Savannah's whereabouts, the officers returned to Brooke and William's apartment for further questioning. Meanwhile, investigators interviewed Ashton, whose alibi was corroborated the next day. Consequently, on Sunday, August 20, 2017, the police visited the couple's residence for the third time. Despite Brooke and William sticking to their story and no incriminating evidence being found, the officers left empty-handed once again. Ashton took matters into his own hands, dedicating every moment to informing locals about the case and asking for their help in finding Savannah. During those anguished hours, the soon-to-be father couldn't stop replaying his last conversation with his girlfriend in his mind, hoping to find a logical explanation for her mysterious disappearance. Determined to follow the only viable lead, the timeline of events, the police took William to the station for an interview. He did everything he could to handle the situation. Meanwhile, back home, both he and Brooke had to care for the newborn, which involved buying necessities for feeding and clothing her. They also began informing their acquaintances that they had become parents, news that quickly reached the investigating officers. Suspecting that Savannah might be held captive somewhere, the police started tailing the couple. Finally, on Tuesday, August 22, 2017, the police raided Brooke and William's apartment. After moving the sofa that had been placed against the door to block entry, they found a chaotic scene. On the bed, they discovered a newborn baby, just a few days old, who was immediately taken to the emergency room. Though Brooke refused to answer the police's questions, both she and William were taken to the station. There, William revealed that when he arrived home that Saturday, Brooke was holding the baby and frantically trying to clean up the scene. His disclosures began to unravel the gruesome story. On Thursday, August 24, 2017, Brooke and William were formally arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and providing false information to the police. Fortunately, the baby was in good health. Genetic tests would later provide crucial evidence against those who took Savannah's life. 3 days later, Savannah's lifeless body was found on the banks of the Red River, wrapped in plastic and adhesive tape. The subsequent autopsy revealed she had been a victim of homicidal violence, though it was unclear whether she died from blood loss or airway obstruction. Genetic tests confirmed that the baby was indeed Savannah's. The child was placed under the care of the county social services and later given the name her biological parents had chosen. Ashton shared an adorable photo of himself holding the baby on social media, a moment of overwhelming joy amidst the tragedy. A candlelight vigil in memory of Savannah was held on the evening of Wednesday, September 6, 2017. The following morning, Thursday, September 7, 2017, a funeral service took place at First Assembly Church. The funeral ceremony was open to the public, drawing nearly 1,000 mourners who joined Savannah's family and friends to pay their final respects amidst tears. Native American songs filled the air as Savannah, remembered as a kind and loving girl, was honored. The town's mayor offered words in memory of the late mother. Many attendees wore red shirts symbolizing not only Savannah's loss, but also the countless other indigenous women who had met similar fates. After the service, a horse-drawn carriage carried Savannah's casket to the cemetery, followed by 10 horses, one of which was riderless. Only Savannah's family attended the burial, placing various items on her coffin according to their tribal beliefs to accompany her on her journey to the afterlife. In later interviews, Ashton shared that he suffered from recurring nightmares following the tragic events. However, the support from friends and the community was overwhelming. One significant gesture was the creation of a fundraising account in his and his baby's names to help cover essential expenses. Granted legal custody of the baby, Ashton focused on her well-being. With the help of Savannah's parents, he spent his days bathing, feeding, and changing the baby, ensuring she had everything she needed. As he later shared with the media, Ashton realized he had become both father and mother. Brooke's trial began in early December 2017 at the Fargo courthouse. At 6 months old, Savannah's baby was seen in her father's arms during the hearings, where Ashton learned in detail the twisted circumstances of Savannah's death. The prosecutor emphasized Savannah's baby took her first breath as her mother took her last, seeking a life sentence without parole for Brooke, whom she called dangerous and heartless. Brooke's attorney requested life with the possibility of parole, arguing that in his 38-year career, he believed everyone could change, pointing to Brooke's acceptance of responsibility. In February 2018, at the sentencing hearing, moments before the judge announced the verdict, Brooke apologized to Savannah's family for the pain she had caused. She acknowledged there was no excuse or way to undo her actions. Ultimately, Brooke was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for the crime against Savannah. William, having accepted a plea deal and cooperated fully with the investigation, avoided charges of conspiracy to commit murder and to take the baby. Instead, he faced lesser charges of conspiracy to kidnap the baby and providing false information to investigators. However, the judge designated William as a particularly dangerous offender due to his prior conviction for child neglect and abuse, increasing his sentencing possibilities from 20 years to life imprisonment. During his sentencing hearing, William expressed deep remorse. However, during the victim impact statement, Savannah's mother expressed that William's supposed remorse was insufficient. She urged the judge to apply the full weight of the law, condemning Williams and his girlfriend's actions as atrocious and twisted. The judge heeded her plea, sentencing 33-year-old William to life imprisonment as a particularly dangerous offender. Despite this, he was given the possibility of parole. William later appealed his status as a particularly dangerous offender, and in August 2019, the North Dakota Supreme Court ruled that the designation was inappropriate. Consequently, a new sentencing was ordered. The second hearing took place on October 7, 2019. Although the judge disagreed with the decision, he aimed to be as severe as possible, sentencing William to 20 years in prison. Beyond the court and complex judicial processes, Savannah's loved ones strove to regain a sense of normalcy, especially because they believed that Savannah's baby deserved a full life, not one overshadowed by grief. For Ashton, every moment with his daughter was particularly precious after surviving such a nightmare. After enduring such a stressful and painful time, Ashton told the press he felt relieved that life for both of them had become much more tranquil and stable. The young father devoted himself to studying business administration at a local community college. Given their financial constraints, Ashton was looking for a better-paying job alongside his obligations. He was very grateful for the support from the fundraising account, using the money to buy a vehicle and renovate their modest home. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.